hit the live here. All right. Chef Todd Richards here, Chef Stephan. We have a great guest tonight. Welcome to Roots, Heart,
and Soul.
On this episode of Roots Heart Soul, we have one of probably, I don't take friends lightly. I think my circle is pretty small of friends and colleagues. We're from Chicago, so I can say she's a sister too, even though she's down in New Orleans. We're going to find out if she's a Bears fan or a Saints fan, but we are so happy to welcome Zella Palmer here to Roots Heart Soul podcast on Heritage Radio Network. Welcome, Zella.
Absolutely. This is our 9th episode, and what a treat it's going to be to have you have a real super conversation with us. We're both super excited.
Very much so.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited, and I just love Todd. I mean, Todd is like a brother to me, and it's so refreshing, to have someone in the industry who understands where you come from and just, has also migrated to the South like me, and I'm appreciative, and I really enjoy this podcast. I'm so excited for it. And Stephan, it's such a pleasure to finally meet you in person. I know we've kind of met each other on social media, but I'm excited to be a part of this. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
The pleasure is all ours. And as a matter of fact, we had connected a few years back on the phone, but unfortunately the time sort of wasn't right because we were losing an icon of the New Orleans cuisine industry, and then time has passed, but nothing is lost.
Nothing is lost. That's right.
Nothing is lost.
That's right.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we have the real and honored pleasure of receiving Miss Zella Palmer for our 9th episode tonight. What an exciting moment this is going to be.
Give us that Rolodex.
New Orleans-based, New Orleans-based James Beard Foundation semi-finalist, U.S. Foodways. She's an author, a professor, a filmmaker, a curator, a scholar, and the chair and director of the Dillard University Ray Charles Program in African American Material Culture in New Orleans, Louisiana. Ms. Zella Palmer is committed to documenting and preserving the African American, Creole, Indigenous, and Latinx cultural history. As the chair of the Dillard University Ray Charles Program, she has filmed and produced the story of New Orleans Creole cooking. Now this is exciting.
Wow.
The Black Hand in the Pot documentary, 2020, under her leadership, Dillard University launched a food studies minor, 1 and 2 accredited academic food studies program at an HBCU, historically Black college and university.
Wow. Unbelievable. I mean, most people don't necessarily understand, how deep we roll, with Roots Heart. So, last week, on episode 8, we had Adrian Miller who did the forward, but Zella wrote the Chicago section of Roots Heart and Soul, because we're both Chicagoans. We both know that area very well, and that's like, who's going to tell the Chicago story better than me? I can talk about it from a food standpoint and understanding that, but who's really going to be able to tell, how the food got from the South to Chicago? And I was so delighted that Zella, agreed to come on and do that with us. And I don't have favorites in parts of the book, but I have favorite sections of the book. And one thing that people are really fascinated about is understanding that, the rich history that of Chicago, where it comes from Haiti, New Orleans, and then Chicago in itself. And just in your travels, as this wonderful professor you are, how do we have this triangle of food between Haiti, New Orleans, and Chicago?
Um, well, I mean, first of all, Chicago, who was it founded by, right? It was founded by a Haitian man, you know, John Point du Sable. I mean, one of our most famous museums, started by Margaret Burroughs, Dr. Margaret Burroughs. Du Sable Museum on the south side of Chicago is named after Du Sable. Um, then we have in New Orleans, we have a huge Haitian influence, obviously because of the Haitian Revolution, which brought a lot of Haitian immigrants to New Orleans right after the Haitian Revolution. And, if you go to some of the runaway slave ads and, some of the auction sales of enslaved people, there were a lot of Haitians that were in that mix. And even when you see Mardi Gras, when you see the flambeau, the culture of the flambeau, when you see on Mardi Gras Day, the skull and bones, all of those are remnants of Haiti. And not only that, the red beans and rice, that is Haitian. You know, every Monday in New Orleans, we cook red beans and rice that was brought over from Haitian peoples, and it continues today. We have many Haitians that now live in New Orleans. It's a band that just moved to New Orleans. They've been really popular. It's called Ram, and they were living in New York. They left New York and after performing in New Orleans and said that they're home. So there's a lot of Haitians right now in New Orleans, and they feel at home there. And Charlie Pierre, he was on I think he was on Top Chef, not Top Chef, but one of those shows. Yeah, I think it was on Top Chef recently. And he has a restaurant called Fritai in New Orleans, and there's some other great restaurants there as well. So the Haitian Chicago New Orleans connection is big. Is big.
Go ahead, Stephan.
Wow. How do I dive into this conversation?
I can't
Let's
leave
see
out New York.
How do I dive
New York,
into
of
this
course.
conversation? Um, for me, my biggest question, and one that I keep trying to figure out, how does we know culturally how the relationship between Louisiana and Haiti, um,
Mhm.
and of course the story between Chicago and Haiti, obviously,
Yeah.
but on a culinary standpoint, other than
Mhm.
red ri- uh, red beans and rice,
Mhm.
um, w- what is the story there, and how does Creole fit into that story, if
That's a
you
good
will?
question. Good question.
Well, I think, we just have to remind ourselves that New Orleans is unlike any place in the United States. It was colonized by the French, it was colonized by the Spanish, then it went back to the French, and then it went to the Americans during the Louisiana Purchase. And there would be no United States if there wasn't a Louisiana Purchase, and there would be no United States if there was a Haitian Revolution. We have to remember that. And we also have to remember that New Orleans is a port city. And so there were so many different people from all walks of life coming into this port city. And it was the most prosperous port city in the United States, next to Charleston and other cities like New York, right? And so when we take that into consideration, there was this merging of all of these cultures, but particularly African cultures. And when we think about just how different injections of African influences into New Orleans, we have to consider the Senegambian period, the first group of enslaved Africans who came from the Senegambian region in the early part of colonization. Then came the Congo period when they came from the Congo. Then came the Haitian Revolution. But all of this also geographically, where New Orleans is located, it is the northernmost city in the Caribbean. So you have
Mm,
all these ships coming in from all over, from Cuba, from Haiti, from all of these places. And we also have to consider the most important export that really revolutionized Louisiana was sugar. Once the Haiti, during the Haitian Revolution, once they couldn't produce that amount of sugar anymore, Louisiana took its place, right? And so all of this is making this profound story of this creolization of a people and this Africanization of a people that came from Cuba, Haiti, um, Senegal, Nigeria, Benin, all of these different, the Congo, all of these different places, and during the domestic slave trade from places like Virginia, which after the transatlantic slave trade ended, the domestic slave trade was institutionalized, and so many came from Virginia, and there was another injection of Black folks into the culture. But Creoles in New Orleans have a deep, rich culture, and it is a culture. It isn't a race. It isn't. It's a culture, and so when we take that into consideration, we understand that it is something so unique to the United States. And it tells the story of not only the United States, it tells the story of the Caribbean and Africa and Latin America.
And Latin America too. Roots Art Soul podcast. Chef Todd Richards, Chef Stephan. We're here with Zella Palmer, and in on Heritage Radio Network. One thing we like to do, because we can go so deep into things. Sometimes we got to meet people where they're at. And I want to go back to something that you both mentioned with red beans and rice. And why dish is so important. So my dad made red beans and rice. And I told this in the previous episode that my mom and my dad made 2 pots of rice every time we had rice, because my mom would put butter in her rice, and my dad said that is sacrilegious. You don't do that. You don't do things like that at all. But red beans and rice, is important. But I want to talk about the spices. Why are the spices such a melting pot of everyone that you just talked about? In red beans and rice, you get the a little bit of heat. You get the paprika. You get the chili. You get the onion and everything. Why are the spices such a melting pot in that one dish?
Well, because you have to consider, Haitian food and Haitian cuisine is so, you know, it's such. Anyone who's tried Haitian cuisine gets it, and there's a lot of love and soul put into it, right? And when I taste New Orleans food, the ones who do it right, and the old school chefs,
Mm-hmm.
um, is nothing like the different layers and complexities of spices. And I'm not gonna lie, with that pickled meat too. That pickled meat when it's in there, and the
Oh wow!
softness of the beans,
Right,
you
right.
know, that's it's a wrap. And the camellia red beans. It's the specific beans that we use, and those camellia creamy beans. It does it every time. And so when you look at some of the old cookbooks, some of the Creole cookbooks, and you read some of the stories about, the recipes that are included, red beans, gumbo, all of these different things, you see that this has a long, rich history. And I always love to tell the story about Louis Armstrong, and how in every letter that he signed, or every autograph that he signed, he always wrote red beans and ricely yours. And he loved red beans so much that
Wow.
his wife, even though she wasn't from New Orleans, he made sure she learned how to cook red beans, because that was his favorite dish. So that says a lot, on how much folks love red beans and rice.
Now, throughout, throughout the years, red beans and rice has taken an evolution of its own.
Sure.
It's become it, even in Haiti. From my own research, when we were first making red beans and rice, the red beans was cooked with salted pork, and we
Mm-hmm.
served that separately from the rice. And
Mm-hmm.
we also had dumplings in the beans. But now, for example, in Haiti, we've lost that a little bit, even though it's still being produced. But we see rice and beans cooked together, or we do what we call sauce pois, which is completely pureeing the red beans, and still adding the salted pork in there, and still added the dumplings in there. Versus where when you see it in Louisiana, you see a little bit of smoked meats and so
Mm-hmm.
forth. how did that evolution, in your opinion, came about?
Well, I mean, it's all about the people, right? And the migration of people, the migration patterns, right? And so when you think about red beans and rice, I mean, Haiti shares the same island as the Dominican Republic, right? And they also eat red beans and rice, and they consider their red beans and rice la bandera dominicana, the Dominican flag. Then you have Hondurans, right? Hondurans also eat their own version of red beans and rice. And it depends, it depends on the influences. Because I was just in Grenada and they put dumplings in their oil down. They put dumplings in a lot of things. In Eastern Caribbean, they put dumplings and things. So that's also the British influence, or somebody's decided, like, you know what? We got some flour. I'm not letting it go to waste. Let me put some seasoning in it and put it in the stew, right? And so it just, whoever was in that cooking over that stove, and whatever group, ethnic group was over that stove, who had an influence, and they kept on being consistent with whatever they put in that pot, determines how dishes evolve over time.
I mean, it's so crazy. Like Stephan talking about red bean puree. Here it is in my first book, Soul. I have the cornmeal, crusted snapper, the rice and the red bean puree. Here it is. I'm thinking I'm hot, I'm hot stuff over here creating something new. And he's talking about, oh man, we've been doing this since, for over 200. I mean, I mean, I might introduce it to a new group of people, but it's just like it just puts your whole being in perspective. You know, so and Stephan, I got a question for you. A lot of times, Zella, on our podcast, we end up asking each other questions. But when you talk about, dumplings, and everything like that. And maybe for both of you all this question, because I know like cornbread to me goes with red beans and rice too. And I wonder, do you think is it the gravy? Is it the gravy we're trying to get more of, or something like that? I mean, I'm just thinking in my mind, like, why would you put dumplings in? Oh, wow, you want to get some of that gravy. You don't want to leave none of that gravy. Or you think about fufu, where you take it and wipe it around the bowl.
Hmm.
To me,
Hmm.
in my mind, that kind of serves the same purpose. What do you think, Stephan?
I,
I'm going to tell
yeah.
you, dumplings is a big deal in Haitian
Hmm.
cooking, and it's a
Okay,
big deal
okay,
in multiple different dishes.
right.
Hmm.
For example, we have this something called bouillon, which is in Dominican Republic is called sancocho.
Hmm.
If you don't
Hmm.
put dumplings in there,
Wow.
you're
Yep.
you're not making it correctly. And it's the
Hmm.
same for the sauce pois, the pureed red beans, or if you're leaving in Dominican Republic, they tend to leave the red beans whole, so it's habituela, and they have
Mm.
to put the dumplings in there as well. It's just, if you're not doing that, something is absolutely incorrect and wrong, and you'll have people looking at you like, oh, where's the
Uh,
And
where's the dumplings? Where's the
and we have to
dumplings?
remember that flour was also a luxury.
oh,
Flour
okay,
was,
okay, okay.
flour was also, something that was exported, right? And
Hmm.
we know this because if you look at some of the early Creole recipes, flour wasn't available as a thickener. Okra and filet was available as a thickener, and that was across the Caribbean as well. But when flour comes in and it's exported, and now it's in abundance, now we can use it. We've been using it for bread. Let's not waste. And Black folks and indigenous folks have always been the kings and queens of not wasting anything. So,
Hmm.
we'll take the
That's true.
flour, rub it together. We got some spices, some nutmeg, whatever else, put it in the dumplings,
Allspice.
roll it up,
Yeah.
all
Mm,
spice, and let's
yeah.
put it in there. So, hmm
So you brought up my next question is the misconception of okra, because I
mm,
believe that like I've seen other people with podcasts or vlogs and things like that, and said that they do not put okra in gumbo, and I'm like, then you have soup. I mean, that's my or a stew. That's my opinion. I could be wrong. I think the word means okra, but there's so many misconceptions about okra that is slimy or is
mm,
this and that. But really okra, is probably one of the you have the holy trinity and you got okra. I mean, they
Mhm.
all go together. How can we help people, understand, that okra is a versatile vegetable. It's more than fried. It can be used more than just gumbo, but it actually has a lot of flavor, and also it acts as a thickener, as you said.
I think it's just sadly it's a generational removal um from okra, and okra. I mean, I think, with us migrating, to different places after or being the grandchildren of the Great Migration, right? And becoming more Americanized, we've forgotten how our grandparents loved okra, because when you talk to the elders, they love the slime. There was nothing
Hmm.
wrong with the slime. And okra, if you go to Nigeria, if you go to different parts, and even, those in the country in Louisiana, they still love okra, you know.
Hmm.
There's Laura, this restaurant in Lafayette. Shout out to Laura's too in Lafayette, Louisiana. They have the best stewed okra that makes you slap your mama. I've never had anything like that before. So it's
Wow.
all about who's preparing the okra, you know. And I mean, of course, if your memory of okra is in a frozen bag, or from Church's chickens and fried okra, then you have not been exposed to good okra. Because
Right.
if you have really good okra, some real stewed okra from the country, you would never, say have a bad word to say about okra.
I
And
don't know.
it's
I guess that church's okra with them hot peppers. Now I can't. I
it was
can't. I
good.
can't.
It was good.
I can't knock that.
But
But go
that's
ahead.
what
I
I'm
mean,
saying. But that's what I'm saying, because then you're only used to fried okra, and you forget about, the not the sliminess, but the fact that it was supposed to be stewed, and
Mhm.
it's a method of doing it. Some don't like all the slime, but like I said, depending on where you're from, like I have friends in Nigeria who love the slime and they draw the slime. And it
Mhm.
just depends. And then once you start removing yourself away from Africa and those memories, then you dislike it. And I think it's a shame, because okra has so many medicinal uses, and it's good for women's health specifically, but also good for men's health as well. So we need to reconsider, and make sure that we have more chefs that do know how to prepare okra correctly. And one of them definitely who does know how to prepare okra well is Chef BJ Dennis. He has some of
I
the best
mean,
okra dishes I've
Yes, he
ever had.
does. Yes, he
You
yeah,
know,
does.
yeah,
yeah.
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 I want to switch up a little bit. I want to switch up
Hmm.
and talk about the work that you're doing at Dillard's, the importance of preserving the African American, Creole, Indigenous, and Latinx culinary history.
Sure.
Why is that so important, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, the mission of of the Ray Charles program in African American material culture was really Ray Charles' vision. We have to understand that Ray Charles was a pioneer in music, a pioneer in owning the culture. He owned the rights to all of his music. He was always advocating for us and by us. And when we consider that his mother was a sharecropper, his grandmother was a sharecropper, when he came to Dillard to receive an honorary degree right before Katrina, he wanted to put together a program that would preserve Black culture. And he saw a void that many of our students are becoming, the microwave generation, the fast food generation, and there's a huge disconnect from the land and the table. So he wanted to do something about that. So we have to preserve African American culture, and we have to teach our students, not only is our culture, you know, one of the most beautiful culture in the world, but it also is, you can also own the culture, just like how you see African Americans, culture export to the entire world, whether it's through music, through fashion, whatever. It's no reason why African American students in particular and young people cannot work in our own culture as many other ethnic groups and stand on their own 2 feet. And so when you also consider that Dillard is in a very indigenous land, sacred land in New Orleans, Bubancha, the land of many tongues, that we are standing on Choctaw land, on Homa land, on Natchez land. then we understand that we have a duty to not only, preserve Black culture, but honor the culture that was there before us and is still there.
What, and not asking you to speak for all, but because you're in the system, you
Hmm.
probably can understand this. But what is the state of HBCUs in this political climate, where sometimes it seems like it's celebrated, and the next day it seems like it's used as a political pawn, or political football being tossed back around and everything like that. But what is the state of HBCUs right now? Where are we going? How do we encourage more to get there? And most importantly, selfishly, how do we make sure that they get great foods like red beans and rice and okra and things like that?
Well, I mean, we're in the news, a lot lately. Obviously, like you said, sometimes used as political pawns, to strengthen voters to sway a certain way or not to sway a certain way. But I think historically, HBCUs, when you look at Howard, when you look at Dillard, Fair Dillard, when you look at Xavier, all at Spelman, Morehouse, all of them, these universities, HBCUs have always been pillars and safe spaces for conversations and debate. And I think, we do have a resurgence of interest, and we do produce the most successful African Americans in the country who are educated. I mean, that goes without saying. And then I think, what we do need support with is, obviously donations, funds, and to make sure that we have more endowments. We need more endowments because that strengthens our power, that strengthens our foundation so that we can support the next generations. And I think by galvanizing and making sure that we are a communiversity, which Dillard always promotes, that we are a communiversity, that our reach goes beyond the campus, that it includes the rest of the community, which has always been. I find that, the legacy of HBCUs continues. And I'm very passionate about that because I'm the third generation in my family to work at an HBCU. My great
Wow.
grandfather worked at Tuskegee. He ran the Veterans Hospital and was just given an award from Veterans Affairs recently for his service in 100 years later. And he was there during the time of Robert Russell Moulton and George Washington Carver. And then my grandfather was a professor at Lincoln as well as Howard. So it means a lot to me to work at an HBCU. I'm invested in it, and I know that our students are, and I see the difference in every graduation. And I myself, you know, encourage any student, it doesn't matter where they're from, to experience an HBCU. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like it.
Wow.
Now, look, my question to you is, your program that you chair and direct is probably very unique in its genres. Does that extend to all the other HBCUs around the country?
Absolutely not. I mean, that's why Ray Charles was a visionary, right? So we're the only university with HBCU with a food studies program, and we're working hard so it becomes a food studies major. As we increase student enrollment, in our classes, like this this semester, our classes are packed. And I'm just so grateful for that. So it means that it's working, the work that we're doing. So hopefully we'll be able to launch a major soon.
So my next question to you is, how do we influence the other HBCUs, the other universities, to follow sort of a template of what you're doing at Dillard's, and even in the way we eat at those
Yeah.
universities and how we
I can
celebrate
I
our food
I, I,
culture.
I can answer that. When Kamala wins, we send Zella to the White House to work on the Department of
Ah,
Education. I
Zella!
can I can say that's my
Ah,
answer. Yeah, that's my answer. But
oh,
Zella, you can answer it your way. Go ahead.
oh. You know, when I wrote I wrote a cookbook called Recipes and Remembrances of Fair Dillard, and it's the Dillard University cookbook from 1869 to 2019. And my colleague, who's a librarian at Dillard, he found a cookbook. He had a cookbook in our archives that had been sitting there since the 1950s. In this cookbook, it told the story of every famous person that passed through Dillard's, you know, halls, and and through the president at the time, President Dent and Jesse Covington Dent, who went to Juilliard. In it were recipes from Lena Horne, Ralph Bunch. Um, who else was in there? Haile Selassie is in there because Haile Selassie came to Dillard University and spoke to 3,000 people. I mean, it was so many different recipes in there. And that was how they raised money, because they didn't have financial aid. They didn't have scholarships like that back then, And so they were selling this community cookbook of all these famous people who were friends of Dillard and raising money for students. Now, I was inspired to write that cookbook and to share Dillard's culinary history because there was a woman in the 90s. Her name was Carolyn Quick Tillery, and she wrote a cookbook for Howard, Hampton, and Tuskegee. And so the information, the culinary history is about HBCUs is already out there. But I also find that it's important to galvanize the young people. I'm so passionate about our students and the youth. I mean, like, we went to Italy, what, a year ago, a year and a half ago, and took them to Terra Madre, and they started their own slow food student chapter. They're gardening. They're such advocates for, slow food, and they're doing such amazing things on campus, and they're doing tincture workshops and their TikTok videos and all of these things. So when it comes from students, I think it's even a more special place, because then that means that they're advocating for their rights to food and food fair justice.
So, Roots Heart Soul podcast, we're 30 something after the hour. Chef Todd Richards with Chef Stephan and Zella Palmer, Heritage Radio Network. Please make sure that during the month of September 25th to be exact, Heritage Radio Network is having a fundraiser in Philadelphia. Go to heritageradionetwork.com and make sure you look and buy tickets for this wonderful 4-course dinner. Also, Heritage Radio Network is seeking interns for this upcoming season. So make sure that you come. If you want to be an intern, you want to come work with us three, and Zella has her own podcast here as well. So make sure, if you want to work with us, tune into Heritage Radio Network on IG to find out more information. All right, so now let's get down to some other business here. Let's talk about sugar, because you brought it up, and sugar, gets a bad rap, in a lot of ways. But, as long as they keep making damn good rum with it, and molasses, I'm going to be a big fan of it, and things like that. But, that triangle again that we talked about in the first 30 minutes of Chicago, Haiti, and Louisiana. And, let's switch the triangle a little bit, from Haiti, Chicago, and other places. The importance of sugar in Black culture, we get tied to it, in some ways, as it's bad for us. But we also talk about refined sugar is pretty much, probably which is more worse than anything else. But how do we, regain our ways with sugar, items like sugar, in order to produce more rum factories, produce more of our own molasses and things like that, where you see a lot of small artisan companies taking things from our past and doing things with them now?
Say that one more time. How do we what now?
How do we reclaim our place with sugar, in the sense that we have some good rum producers, but now I'm seeing other people taking other cultures taking our rum recipes and doing it,
Right.
our molasses, making small batch molasses now, and things like that, things that came out of our culture and our history. How do we reclaim our place with sugar, and understanding that it's not this bad thing that we we're told that it is, but I don't think that's really what that means.
By supporting Black sugarcane farmers. When I think about June and Angie Provost in Louisiana and the things that they went through, if you look at the 1619 project, they were a part of that. And unfortunately, a lot of their land was stolen, and a lot of, they're down, at least in Louisiana, they're down to maybe three, four families left who are Black sugarcane farmers. Um, but we can also not only support, Black sugarcane farmers in the South in the United States, but sugarcane farmers that are in the Caribbean as well. I think, it's sugarcane, and in Africa as well. I mean, sugarcane is hard work. It's no joke. And the technology behind it. If they could be angel investors, perhaps in buying the tractors needed or the processing needed, or to make sure that you support people like the provost. Then we can talk about making sure that we get access to people who actually fourth, fifth generation in growing sugarcane, because when you hear the provost story, which they're both dear friends of mine, when you hear their story about how much they love raising sugar, then you have a different perspective of why it should matter to us, and that we've always done it, and that there was a time that it wasn't just, part of an ugly past, but it was also part of generational wealth in Black families. And we know that land, gives us when you own land, it gives us access to power, to policy, to decisions, important decisions in our area. So I think that's the best way that we can start, is by supporting, Black sugarcane farmers throughout the our region.
Chef Stephan, I know you got some pressing questions over here. I can see it on
No,
your face.
no, 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 no. Hey, listen, I am soaking up the knowledge.
Right.
Mhm.
Um, when Chef Todd and I are getting ready this weekend for the Creole Food Festival
Mm.
in Atlanta. As a matter of fact,
So sound like we
um,
got to go to New Orleans too, though, next year.
Yeah,
I think we do. I think we
Right.
do. I
Okay.
think
yeah.
we do.
Right.
So when the conversation happens around food, and we say Creole, the
Mhm.
conversation sort of stays within New Orleans almost
Mm.
uniquely.
Mm.
Uniquely,
Mm.
when we
Mm.
discover that Creole cuisine itself is all over the Americas,
Mhm.
from the United States to Latin America to the
Mhm.
Caribbean. Um,
Mhm.
and I can say that I'm very proud to say that I've led the conversation about uh, Creole cuisine and Haitian cuisine in particular
Mhm.
the last
Mhm.
14 years into a movement that has led to multiple chefs, um, um, now receiving James Beard awards and James Beard nominations, which wasn't happening 14 years ago. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
how do we take this Creole conversation, this Creole cuisine,
Mhm.
to make it more global?
I think, it's all about branding and marketing, you know, um, and bringing Creole cuisine into the 21st century. And so when, I just came from, like I said, I just came from Grenada, and, I saw restaurants that were advertising, and these are, just mom and pop restaurants, and they're saying, Grenada Creole cuisine, Grenada Creole restaurant, Um, and I think a lot of times, when I was sometimes even when I was there and I was talking to some of the elders, they have all of these recipes, but they don't have the young people to, you know, put it in a package to sell to the world. There was a woman I met who was a baker, incredible baker, and she, was able to hire someone to type up all of her recipes, and it was in a book this thick. But, you know, how does she said, how do I get this to the world? I love baking, and so that is something that the next phase of the Black food industry, or, is putting our food on a global scale, but rebranding it and repackaging it. Because for too long, our food has been considered either slave food, or even when you consider West and Central African, or East African, or however, it was considered ethnic food. And so we have to, as a collective, we already have the product. We just need to put it out there. And sometimes it doesn't necessarily just have to just be, you know, just a chef, and the ego behind it. It's a collective, go into those mom and pop places, you know, put it, if you're a photographer, just go in there and just do the work, because it's so much bigger than just, the surface level, celebrity chef culture. It's so much bigger. It's about our identity as a people globally. We're the only group of people who do not, who are, our food and our cuisine and our culture is not considered at a at a level that, let's say, Asia or France or Italy is at. So it's time, and we've been doing the cooking for centuries. We just need the branding impact. That's all it is. Branding, marketing. We just have to use the tools that they have to put our stuff on, at the level that it's always deserved.
You're preaching in the pulpit, not even to the choir. You're preaching in the pulpit. I mean, one thing that that we talk about is that the economic fortune of our community is going to have to be with our food. I mean,
Yeah.
because we're the only people that can cook dishes for a certain amount of hours and charge the least amount of price.
Come
For
on now.
and if anyone thinks that you can just fry chicken all day without any skill, you're sadly mistaken. I mean,
Yeah.
it takes great skills, to do that. And so, you spoke about, not only Black culture, but Latin culture. And the
Hmm.
reason why this is so important, to me, and this is why, if you look at, Roots Heart Soul, the cookbook, we go to the DR, we go to PR, we
Hmm.
go to those places. And one thing I said is that if we erase the colorism, in the food, then we have even more power.
Hmm.
Only in this country do we consider ourselves the minorities when our culture is the one food wise and flavor wise is driving that. So what are some pathways through our food that we can continue these conversations between Latinx and Black culture in order to make our foods more of a together statement so that we can have that global platform that you're speaking of?
I think in major cities, we can be the hubs. I mean, Chicago, born and raised in Chicago, and my fondest my food memories are, you know, is so entrenched in the South, but it's also so entrenched in Puerto Rico and Cuba. And I say that, and for example, I'll give you an example. When my grandmother died, my when my grandmother died, my family was so, distraught and just in pain from her death. But it was an extended aunt who was Puerto Rican who made all the food for the repast. So, can you imagine the love that I felt? And here we are eating arroz con gandules, lechon, all of the, Puerto Rican dishes. But that's part of our memory, our cultural memory, because you grew up in Chicago and you're eating it because somebody married into the family or whatever,
Hmm.
or you're going to a baby shower, and I've worked, when I worked in Chicago, it was all love. We all were working in the same place. And when in the break room, when it was time for a family meal or whatever, everybody was bringing their own potluck dishes. And you can't tell me that the Puerto Rican and Mexican food isn't as a fond memory to growing up in Chicago as rib tips at this point, right?
Right, right.
And even like, and now you're seeing a huge you know explosion of Cuban restaurants in Chicago, which makes me super happy,
Hmm.
and in New Orleans, there's all these Afro-Cuban artists that have moved there, and there's an explosion of Cuban music, Afro-Cuban music in New Orleans right now. With the musicians, then next is going to be the food, because the music and food go hand in hand, you
That's right.
know. So I think in these places, it's already naturally happening because we are living in the same communities together. We're eating together. There's a jazz musician, a Cuban jazz musician named Victor Campbell, and he's in New Orleans, and he's always just so always saying, I'm so grateful to New Orleans for loving me and taking me in. And I think as when we continue to build community with each other, and break bread with each other, and that is already naturally happening. We don't need sometimes, a dinner to bring us together. I think that's sometimes a gentrified way of doing things. It's already happening. It's been happening. I mean, it's so funny, when you listen to sometimes the TikTok arguments, and they were talking about, you know, some of the younger people didn't understand that Latinos were the first, were part of hip hop from the beginning, and they, in their
Right.
mind, they're thinking this monolithic, segregated culture, that's not how it was, and it was never like that in Chicago and New York. We've always lived together, and so, to not understand that is ahistorical. And I think for some of the other cities, they're just seeing, Latinos move into their communities, and they're still trying to figure things out, and Caribbeans move into their communities, and now Africans moving into their communities, because like even in Chicago, there's lots of Senegalese restaurants now,
Right. Right.
and there's a rise of West African chefs that are doing incredible work, and they're putting, Africa on the map. And so, and they're branding, Africa. They're putting out there with, beautiful aesthetics, cookbooks that are coming out. Some of the top chefs, Serena Bay in New Orleans, at the Cardinola won best new restaurant, and his speech, said it all, and he said, I don't want to be compared with Creole restaurants. I want to be Senegalese,
Mm,
and it's okay.
mm.
We have to be authentically ourselves. We have to be authentic, and it is enough. Black, our culture, Black culture globally is not a monolith. We are so
Never have.
nuanced. We are so diverse. We never have. We have never been that way, And so the more we put it out there, the more we brand ourselves, the more we work together, because we're stronger together. And I mean, and I think that's one of the biggest challenge is to remove this Western concept of the chef. That's, we need to create something completely different. We need to create, what it means to be a Black chef, what it means to be a Black food historian, and not bring in these, the ego and the celebrity and the ugly side to it. We need to remove that. We can create something way more beautiful.
But I think the
Community.
story itself becomes more powerful in our uniqueness, but yet we become such a global powerhouse.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
there's nothing that can stop us from that point.
Absolutely. And I'm excited for even, just some of the, like Chef Michael Alegbede, he's I can't say what he's about to do, but just keep your eyes on him. From Lagos, Nigeria. He had Eton the test kitchen. Just keep your eyes on him. He's about to do some stuff.
So I have a very pressing question. So
Yes.
you've received some very prominent chefs um, at Dillard's.
Yes.
Now we need to create an opportunity to bring Chef Todd Richards to New Orleans.
Yes, let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this.
Not only to
Yes.
celebrate Roots, Heart, and Soul,
Yes.
because really the book is a celebration of the whole dogma of Pan African cuisine.
Yes.
And
It is.
I think what an amazing um, thing it could be. It would be not only to bring him down, but to have him as a speaker at Dillard's.
Yes, absolutely. Let's do it, Todd. Let's do
Let's
it.
do it.
Let's do it. Yes, let's
Yes.
do
Yeah.
it.
Just have me a grill out there, because I can't
We
come
would
and
love
talk.
to
I
have
can't
you.
come and talk without cooking. It's like,
No, we would love to have you. We would love to have you. That would be an honor. We would love to have you.
I,
Both
I,
of y'all. Both of y'all. We
Well,
need both of y'all to
let's
come
go. Yeah.
down.
Hey, what year did we do this? Did you do the summit, Zella?
Oh,
Down.
that was 2015, I think. About
Yeah.
two. Yeah, it's been
I
a
mean,
while.
yeah. So it's almost 10 years. I mean, we almost need to get back to another summit
We do.
of thought leaders. Stefan and I were talking about that earlier this week. This past weekend, we were talking about it, and really not only to just to. First, we need fellowship. We all need to
Yeah,
get together. We need to know where
Absolutely.
everybody's at because everyone is all over the place right now. To
yeah.
get everyone in one, one room, one hall. But secondly, we also have to talk about policies and things like that that are important
Mhm.
to us. That
Mhm.
we things that we want to shape. And have and control our own narrative and things like
Mhm.
that. That moving forward. So.
For sure. For sure. We need more of that, because we're at a I think we're at a crossroads right now. There is, we like I said, we have to decide who we want to be in this next decade. You know,
Mm.
um, in the beginning we had obviously the legends, Berta Mae Grosvenor, Edna Lewis, so many at that time period, and then we had pioneers like Jessica B. Harris, Tony Tipton Martin, who are still doing incredible work,
Hmm.
and then we had an interest in black chefs and black foodways and telling our stories, and then now but it's still us fighting, I think, and I won't say fighting, but we're given very minimal opportunities, you know
Mm.
Just
Hmm.
a very few seats at the table.
just a very few seats at the table. And I think us who have been in this industry for quite some time, we need to, just like they did with every, with hip hop, with whatever. And I feel like, food, the black food world is, we are in a way becoming, kind of the early stages of hip hop, you know.
I agree.
And I think, we have to really decide how we want to shape this, you know. And it's interesting because, I see, and we know what happened with hip hop, right?
We see it
And
right
so we
now.
also we see it right now. So we have to be very careful because, I see a lot of folks doing our food who don't look like us, who don't know
No,
anything about us, but they're
no.
making a killing and barbecue.
Oh my goodness, this high horse boy, you about to get us all on the soapbox. Some of these lyrics about things that people do, but you won't eat okra. Like, explain that to me.
Come on now. Come on now.
explain that to me. You will
But the
do all
right
these things,
chef, the
but
right
you won't eat
chef
okra.
from
Yeah.
another ethnic group, the
Or
right
or
chef
or
from another ethnic group will put it on a plate and sell it for
or or,
$150.
or,
Come on
or
now.
or you're ashamed to just put your finger in that food and just
Right,
put it in your
right,
mouth.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
Because there's no
right.
other way to eat fufu and okra, my friend,
Come
Yeah.
but
on
with your
now.
fingers.
Come on now. Come on now. Come on.
I,
Yes.
well, this is great. We got about a couple more minutes here. Roots Heart Soul podcast. Chef Todd Richards, Chef Stephan with Zella Palmer on Heritage Radio Network. So I have to ask the question before we get out of here, especially you're a Chicagoan, but you've been
Yes.
in New Orleans for a while. So I mean, is it
Woo.
Bears? Is it Saints? I mean, which team are you
Okay.
rocking with?
Uh
Which team are you
oh.
rocking?
Okay.
Are
Uh
you rocking with
oh.
now?
Okay. So I don't want to get in trouble with anybody, my family in Chicago, because my brother and I always get into this argument.
Uh,
But I was very young when the Bears won the Super Bowl. So I don't have those memories of the Bears winning anything. The Bears were always losing when I grew up. So
yeah.
my memories is of New Orleans and the Saints winning because I was in New Orleans at the time. So my memories go deep from watching the Saints at that time. I think I was fresh out of grad school, or I was in grad school at the time. And so that memory is very precious to me. So I'm a huge Saints fan. I hold season tickets. Um, New Orleans, what can I say? I mean, they do it right. But I will tell you this: I am a Bulls fan. I am a diehard Bulls fan because I
Okay.
did grow up during the Jordan years, and so
Okay.
Jordan. I can say that I have one foot in and one foot out.
So
So sorry if I don't.
when are you running for mayor of New Orleans? Because that's the most politically
Oh Lord, look, look,
correct
I'm
answer.
staying out of that. Okay, I'm staying out of that.
But
I'm staying out of that.
there is one pressing question.
You had three
You're from
already.
you're from Chicago. You're from
Yes,
Chicago, but
yes,
you are now a New Orleans. Uh,
yes.
uh,
Hmm.
what
Ambassador.
is Zella Palmer's
Mhm.
best food on the table? What
Oh,
if you invited us to Sunday dinner? What would be on
okay.
this table?
Gumbo.
No one will be staying to Monday because I'm not leaving out no ribs either way.
Okay, so I consider myself a global citizen because I
Okay.
love, I've been all over, I've lived all over the world. So, and my dad, he made sure that we traveled because he used to work with the United Nations for many years. So I'm gonna tell you what I love. I love gumbo. I have so many fond memories of gumbo because my grandfather, in Chicago, growing up, he always had gumbo for his birthday because it was roots are in New Orleans. So gumbo is my favorite. I have gumbo, a bomb pot of gumbo, with potato salad because you got to put the potatoes. That's a German influence, but we put a scoop of potato salad on top of it, and it's something about the potato salad and when
The
the gumbo
creaminess.
is super, the creaminess and the I can't explain it, but if you live in New Orleans, you know what I'm talking about. Then I would have redfish courtbouillon. It is one of my
Mm,
favorite dishes. I
mm.
love redfish courtbouillon. What else would I have? Oh, so much. I would have definitely some Cuban and Puerto Rican food. I
Mm.
love a good lechon. I love North Carolina tomato pie.
Oh man.
Those are my roots from my
Oh
mother's
my
side. I love North
God.
Carolina tomato pie.
Mm.
Um, a Lumbee collard sandwich because my Lumbee tribe in North Carolina. Shout out to them and their collard sandwiches that are just off the chain. Um, and I would love also Moroccan cuisine because I love to go to Morocco every year. So I would also have some Moroccan mint tea
That's right. You're
as
going
well.
back this year, right? I mean,
Yes, I
again,
am. Yes, I am. If you
I
want to
wish
invite to go with me for
I,
Thanksgiving,
I wish I can make. I don't know. Me. I have a passport. We're just subject to show
see,
up.
y'all need to go with me.
Yeah.
Y'all need to go with me. And lately, since I came back from Grenada, I'm loving oil down. Grenada oil down. I really, really, really enjoy that. And they have something called tiny log too, and it's like a porridge that they make out of provisions, and it has spices in it. It blew my mind, and it's supposedly good for women's fertility and all of these medicinal things. So I've been enjoying that as well. hmm So I would
Man.
whatever I've been lately, but my go-to is definitely gumbo, redfish courtbouillon, a good Chicago taco too. I can't leave out
Oh, right.
Chicago tacos. I can't
Especially
leave
over
out
on
Chicago
Avenue
tacos.
K with that goat
Yes,
taco, like a basic.
come on now.
See, Stefan, that's why you can't talk to Zella because I got a cold slice of pizza in the refrigerator, and now ain't nothing going to compare. Nothing going to compare. Now it's like, oh yeah, it's like, yeah,
We're gonna have to have another conversation.
yeah.
You will.
I think
But
so.
You
but
know
before
what? The last thing, the stewed okra. We need to have some
Still,
stewed
yeah,
okra
still
on the
talking.
table. Yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
but before we say goodnight to Zella,
Mm.
please share with us, where do we find you? How do we
Yes,
follow you? You are doing
sure.
such an amazing amount of work. Um,
Thank you.
so we definitely need to make sure that our audience knows where to follow you and where to
Yes,
find you. Um,
thank you.
so
Thank you. So my Instagram page is Maison Zella, MaisonZella. You can also follow if you're interested in the Ray Charles program at Dillard University. You can follow us at Dillard_Ray Charles. And I also have a website, ZellaPalmer.com. So you can follow there. And then look, check out our YouTube channel. I know that that you guys mentioned our documentary that I filmed in, what was it, 2016 release it. I think it's now up to like um 200,000 views now or something
Oh,
like
that's
that. But
great.
it's
That's
Wow.
great.
the story of New Orleans Creole cooking, the black and the pot. And my next documentary is coming out hopefully by December. It's called Grenada to the World, the Island of Spice.
So we'll put the link for the YouTube one on our Roots Heart Soul YouTube
Absolutely.
channel as well. Yeah.
So,
Thank you. Thank you.
ladies and gentlemen, we are coming to the end of this amazing conversation with the incredible Zella Palmer, with my co-host and brother Chef Todd Richards. Um, we want to say goodnight, but before we do, please don't forget to check us out on Heritage Radio Network and also our YouTube channel, Roots Heart and Soul Podcast. And of course, make sure you follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, at Chef Todd Richards and at chefstephan.it, and also on Roots Heart and Soul on IG and Facebook. Thank you so much, Zella Palmer, for joining us tonight. This was an incredible conversation. We need to have another one very soon.
Indeed. Thank y'all. Thank y'all for having me. Thank you to your listeners.
Thank you very much. Roots Heart Soul Podcast on Heritage Radio Network.